Okay, Joseph, back to you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. And it's really a pleasure and an honor to be on this webinar talking about a topic that is very, very timely: demystifying Azure, how an MSP, how a reseller can navigate Azure and build a profitable cloud IT practice. So I'm going to take you through this. We only have 30 minutes, and actually I think about 25 minutes. So we are going to do this in a pretty quick way, but of course it's a topic that can be addressed for many, many, many hours. The first question I think you need to ask yourself is, what is stopping a customer, a partner, a reseller from moving to the cloud? What are the reasons that MSPs have not moved to the cloud today? And I would say that there are really three primary reasons that an MSP has not moved to the cloud, three challenges that they have. The first is an MSP, a managed service provider, will say, you know, I don't have any people in my company who know how to build and architect and manage an IT environment in Azure. So as a result, I have two choices. I can either hire someone from outside my company who knows how to do this, or I can retrain my existing staff. And either of those two choices presents me with an expense to my business that I did not anticipate. The second challenge that MSPs have is they say, you know, I've looked at Microsoft Azure and I find it to be complicated or complex. I've looked at it, I've gone to the Azure portal, I just don't really understand it. And then the third challenge that we hear from MSPs, and we hear this challenge sometimes more than the other two, is they say, Azure seems risky to me. I know how to go buy a server, install that server, manage it, monitor it, and secure it. And now you are saying to me, welcome to the world of consumption, where I will charge my customer based on how much they consume. I feel as an MSP that that is risky. I feel like I don't know how much my customer is going to consume, and I might get left holding the bill for my customer if they overconsume. So these are typically the three primary challenges that we hear MSPs state in terms of not building a cloud practice. But what I'm here to tell you is that those challenges, while real, are not reason enough to not move forward into building a cloud practice. We believe that every MSP should be thinking about aggressively moving to the cloud today. And if they're not, that they're going to be at a disadvantage to their peers in the market. So what I'm going to talk about now are 4 steps to building an Azure practice, 4 things that you as an MSP really want to understand and learn about and know about in thinking about building a cloud practice in Microsoft Azure. Again, we don't have time to go through all of these in great detail, so I'm going to give you sort of the high level. And if you have any questions or want to speak more about it to me or to Microsoft, you can feel free to reach out. So we're going to go through these 4 topics. Number 1, that Azure is very big and you need to understand what is relevant to you. Number 2, understanding Azure terminology. Number 3, learning Azure margin optimization strategies, or in other words, how to make money selling Azure. And number 4, developing a packaged Azure offer that's easy to transact. So the first thing that's important to understand is that it's true, Azure is very big. There are many, many, many services, over 1,000 different services in Azure. And I created this slide to show you that when you approach Azure as an MSP, it can appear to be overwhelming. It can appear to be too big to understand. But the good news is that for you as an MSP, you don't need to understand all of these different services in order to get started building a cloud practice in Microsoft Azure. Many of these services, in fact, you don't need to know anything about. What do you need to understand? You need to understand some of the concepts that are similar to the concepts that you use in the on-premises world. Things like compute, storage, networking, backup, Active Directory, how to authenticate people. These are topics that you probably are familiar with, but now you need to understand how to do those things in Microsoft Azure. But do you really need to understand machine learning or analytics or bot framework, let's say, in order to move to Azure as an MSP? I would argue the answer is no. I think you could get started building a great cloud practice in Azure and move all of your clients to Azure without having to delve deep into those topics right from the beginning. So understanding that although Azure is big, but that it is approachable and that you really only need to understand a subset of this. That, I think, is the first step to taking the journey towards Microsoft Azure. So when you think about Azure and you think about the different terms that we hear a lot about these terms called IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. So for most MSPs, they've already taken the first step towards the cloud with SaaS, with Microsoft 365. Most MSPs, probably 85, 90% of MSPs, have already deployed their customers into Microsoft 365. The next thing you need to understand is infrastructure as a service, understanding how to move your customers' infrastructure to the cloud using things like virtual machines and managed disk. You do not need to understand platform as a service at this stage in order to build a successful cloud practice in Azure. We have made it easier for you at Nerdio to, as an MSP, understand the basic terminology of Azure. We've written a white paper that is available on our website. If you go to getnerdio.com/academy, which I've included in this slide here, you could see a great white paper that we've created free of charge to teach you about the terminology, elements, and hierarchy of building a cloud practice in Azure. So again, the main takeaway is that the next thing we need to focus on now as an MSP is infrastructure as a service. The next thing you need to understand is, how do I buy Microsoft Azure? And there are many ways to buy Microsoft Azure. You've probably heard about all of them: CSP, pay-as-you-go, enterprise agreement. For you as an MSP, there's only one way that you need to understand, and that is CSP. Microsoft wants you to move to the CSP program. So you as an MSP become what's called either a CSP reseller, where you buy Azure from a cloud distributor like a Pax8 or an Ingram or a Tech Data, or you could be a direct CSP where you have a direct billing relationship and purchasing relationship with Microsoft. Although most MSPs, when they're starting out, typically are CSP resellers. They are buying Azure from a cloud distributor. And the good news for most of you who are listening to this call is that you probably are already a CSP reseller for Microsoft 365. You already are using a cloud distributor to purchase Microsoft 365. So now you simply need to go to that cloud distributor and you need to say, I would like to extend my relationship with you and become a CSP reseller for Azure. And we'll talk in a few minutes about why that is beneficial to you. But for you as an MSP, the only way you should be thinking about buying Azure is through the CSP program. Now, the next thing you need to understand and become familiar with are resources and billing. So how do you actually purchase, and what is it that you are purchasing when you buy Microsoft Azure from your cloud distributor? Again, we've written a great white paper that you could download for free from our website, an MSP's Complete Guide to Azure Resources, and you will learn the different terminology and things you need to understand around compute, storage, and networking. So for example, virtual machines. There are many families, there are many types of virtual machines. The D series, the E series, the B series, the NV series. What do all those mean? And when should you as an MSP use one versus the other? Our paper will help walk you through that, but it's important as an MSP to understand the types of compute, the types of storage, and how to do networking. And we lay this all out to you in the white paper that we've written as well. Now, in order to introduce the next section, which is really about how do I as an MSP make money selling Microsoft Azure, it's important to understand the general concept of how you as an MSP are billed for engaging with Microsoft on Microsoft Azure. So the way to think about it is that there are two meters that are spinning in Microsoft's Azure cloud. There's a compute meter and an operating system meter. And that is what you are renting. That is what you are purchasing from Microsoft when you engage with Microsoft Azure. You are purchasing compute and you are purchasing the Windows Server operating system. And your goal as an MSP is to pay as little as possible for those services while still providing a great service to your end customers. So you're probably asking yourself, well, how do I do that exactly? I've thought, many people have come to us at Nerdio and said, I feel like moving to the cloud is more expensive than on premises. And I'm here to tell you that that is absolutely not the case. You could make more money, and you can make a lot of money in the cloud versus the on-premises world. The trick is to understand how you are billed for compute and how you are billed for the Windows Server operating system. So what I'm going to walk you through now are 4 ways that you can make money selling Azure. Or in other words, how do you as an MSP reduce your Azure bill so you could increase your margins when you are bringing your customer to the cloud with Microsoft Azure? And good news, we've written a white paper on that as well. It's up on our Nerdio Academy. It's called Azure Margin Optimization for MSPs. And everything I'm going to talk to you about now in the next few minutes, we have written a white paper on this as well. So there's 4 ways, and I'm going to take you through each of these right now. The first is to become a CSP reseller, as I mentioned before. You call up your cloud distributor, you let them know that you'd like to be a CSP reseller, and for doing that, you will get probably about 10% or so off of the cost, off of the list price of Microsoft Azure. It could be higher, it could be slightly lower, but most cloud distributors will offer you about a 10% discount for purchasing Microsoft Azure for them. And the great news is that Microsoft has a lot of discounts and a lot of other programs that they run throughout the year to encourage their CSP resellers to move more of their customers to Microsoft Azure. So if you have not become a CSP reseller already, it's sort of table stakes in order to build a successful cloud practice in Microsoft Azure. The second optimization strategy for making more money in Azure is to leverage something called Azure reservations, otherwise known as reserved instances. The idea of an Azure reservation is that you as an MSP commit to purchasing a specific amount of compute from Microsoft in a specific Azure region and for a specific virtual machine family. And if you do that, Microsoft will give you up to a 57% discount on the list price of Microsoft Azure. You could either buy a 12-month term or a 36-month term. Now, you are probably listening to this webinar saying to yourself, well, wait a second, why do I want to lock myself in to 12 or 36 months of purchasing compute from my cloud distributor, from Microsoft? Well, the truth is, you're really not locking yourself in because you can always return the reservation to Microsoft, and the most you will pay is a 12% cancellation fee on the cost of the unused compute. So although you're making a reservation with Microsoft and making a commitment, you can cancel that commitment and pay 12% of the unused compute. So that becomes a little bit of a math exercise for you. You need to see how many months will it take until you've paid off that savings you're going to make. Typically on a 36-month reservation, it's about 6.5 months. And after those 6.5 months, you are in the money and you are making more money than even if you have to return the reservation. You can exchange the reservations. You could reassign the reservations. There are many things you could do to ensure that you have flexibility. So at Nerdio, we always recommend that you make a reservation on the compute. Remember the 2 meters I talked about, the compute meter and the operating system meter. This is what stops the compute meter from running. The third strategy is to leverage something from Microsoft, a licensing program called Azure Hybrid Benefit. This is where you get to take the Windows Server operating system that you have purchased through a previous licensing program for Microsoft, and you could apply those cores, those licenses, to the Azure cloud and not have to pay for to rent the Azure operating system any longer. So again, this is what stops the Azure meter from running. So most MSPs do not have software assurance on their clients. Their clients don't own software assurance. So what you would do is you'd go to your cloud distributor and you'd purchase something called a CSP software subscription that are sold in packs of 8. And you can then have the entitlement to bring those cores to the cloud. And again, you could save a significant amount of money on your Azure costs. And then finally, the fourth way to save money on the list price of Microsoft Azure is to use a technique called autoscaling. And you would use a automation platform like Nerdio for this. And the idea of autoscaling is that the system that you're using recognizes or can be programmed by you to understand when your users are making use of Azure and when they are not. And when they are not, it spins down the virtual machines so that you don't get charged for the resources that you are not using. It will spin down, it will resize the virtual machines, and then when your customer comes back into work, it will make sure that all the resources are ready to go. So the way to really do this is, again, to leverage an automation platform similar to Nerdio, which I'll talk about in a moment, which has this automation technology built into it. So those are the 4 ways that you can significantly make money on Microsoft Azure relative to the list price. And the MSPs who work with us at Nerdio are regularly seeing an ability to save up to 80% off of the list price of Azure when they use these different techniques that we recommend. So now that you've learned how to make money on Azure, the 4th thing to do is to come up with an offer. So you, in your MSP practice, need to come up with an Azure offer. And we have written a paper on this as well, how to create Azure offers and packages. You need to decide how many plans there should be, what the offer looks like. I've given you an example here on the slide where you think about what your different infrastructure pieces are going to cost, what the software costs, security, management, services, and then you publish this to your website as to what your different packages are. So those are really the 4 steps to building a successful cloud practice in Azure. And really, I think for any MSP who has been concerned or worried or nervous about moving to Azure, you could see that it is not quite as overwhelming as you might think. At Nerdio, we have a product called Nerdio for Azure that allows you to easily build a successful cloud practice in Azure. And we've made investments in 4 primary areas that allow you to do this. The first is deployment. With our tool, Nerdio for Azure, you go to your cloud distributor and purchase your Azure subscription, your Microsoft 365 subscription, and then you come to our tool and you connect those subscriptions to Nerdio for Azure. And within 2 hours, your entire IT environment in Azure is built automatically for you. What do I mean by that? Your domain controller, your Active Directory, your Microsoft 365, your virtual desktops, including the new Windows Virtual Desktop, which we'll talk about in a future session. Everything that you have needed to do by hand, we automate the process and make it easy for you to deploy Microsoft Azure. So now you can save a lot of time and effort from your engineers having to do this themselves, and you could feel confident that it is a very accurate process as well. The second investment we've made is in pricing. We know that for an MSP, understanding the true cost of bringing a customer to Azure is sometimes confusing. And when you go to the Azure calculator, you may not come away really understanding what it's going to cost you. So we've created something called the Nerdio Cost Estimator that allows you to input your customer environment, and then on the other side comes out a per user per month cost for purchasing Microsoft Azure from your distributor, for purchasing all the resources you need, and we architect the solution for you so you understand which virtual machines you need, which instance size and OS disk size. So now we have helped you create significant clarity when it comes to building a cloud practice in Azure and moving a customer to Azure. The third area that we've invested in is management. So once you've brought your customer to Azure, we help you and your help desk with the ongoing management. We organize our portal, the Nerdio admin portal, across the types of tasks you will accomplish: users, groups, servers, networking, backup, security, and many others. And we allow you to accomplish every task you want to accomplish on behalf of your customers in 3 clicks or less. So your help desk is able to be much more efficient. They're able to help customers much faster, and you're able to save money on the cost of managing your customer. And then finally, the 4th investment we've made is what we spoke about earlier: optimization. Being able to automate and leverage autoscaling to ensure that you could spin down the Azure resources that you don't need to use in the off hours and spin them back up ahead of time when they can be used. So these are the 4 areas of investment that we've made with Nerdio for Azure. We have 2 plans that we sell our product. The first is Nerdio for Azure Core. For Nerdio for Azure Core, you get to leverage everything I've talked about: the deployment, pricing, management, and optimization. And we charge $59 a customer account, a customer tenant a month. So regardless of how many resources you would like to use or you need to use, we charge a flat fee of $59 a customer account a month. And then our other plan is the enterprise plan. And the enterprise plan does everything that Core does, and it allows you to spin up virtual desktops. So for those of you who have heard about the new Windows Virtual Desktop, this is the plan that you want. You could spin up a Windows Virtual Desktop environment in a few minutes, bless you, and the pricing is $12 a desktop a month when you use this plan. So for next steps, certainly we recommend that you think about which customers you are ready to bring to the cloud. It could be really any workload. You have to win somewhere before you win everywhere. So find your first customer, decide that you're going to bring them to the cloud, and then take the steps. Figure out the right timing for that. And then if you would like more information about how to work with us at Nerdio, we have the Nerdio Academy, which I've spoken about, which is a source of incredible resources for managed service providers to learn how to build a cloud practice in Azure, everything from the business side to the deep technical side. And if you would like to get in contact with me and have more questions about how we can help you at Nerdio, you could see my email there on the screen, jlandys@getnerdio.com, or you could find us on our website at getnerdio.com, where we have a free trial of our product. You could check out our academy, and you could also check out our cost estimator if you're interested in seeing what it will cost you to bring a customer to Azure. So with that, thank you very much for your time today, and I will open it up for any questions that you may have.
Yeah, the $12 fee for the virtual desktop is on top of what we pay to Microsoft Azure, or that includes the complete WVD costing to the end user?
That's right. No, that is the fee to use our SaaS product, Nerdio for Azure, and then you need to purchase the Azure and the Microsoft 365 resources on top of that. But typically when you're running, let's say, a Windows Virtual Desktop environment, you'll find that the costs for WVD, service from Microsoft and the Azure resources and Microsoft 365 are not very significant. We typically see MSPs being able to stand up a user in WVD for around $40 or $50 US and get at least 50, 60, sometimes 80 to 100% points of margin on that seat in a managed services relationship.
Got you. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
Joseph, I see a question in the chat. How much was the Azure Enterprise?
Azure Enterprise is, so Nerdio for Azure Enterprise is our virtual desktop product. It costs $12 a desktop user a month.
Okay. So Joseph, I have a client, they are using an Azure remote desktop servers, 5 remote desktop server beefy boxes with 600 users connecting to it. The problem they have is they're not happy with the OneDrive. The OneDrive challenges, as well as also they are using something called Microsoft Defender ATP with Siren content filtering. Siren is a third-party Israeli company which tied up with Microsoft for content filtering. So MDATP content filtering does not work on Windows servers. So I'm trying to move them towards WVD. And my question to you is, do you think WVD for a 600 users would be in the same? The end user is asking that if the price is same, I'm okay. If the price is going to be exorbitant difference, then I'm not going to go with that solution.
Yeah, I would think it would not be exorbitant. I would encourage you to email me privately, and I'd be happy to work through that with you.
You got it.
You see my email address here on the screen?
Yes, I'm connected with you through Microsoft earlier. I think I came across either at Ignite or some other place.
Great. All right, great. Just send me a note and we'd be happy to help you. Great. Any other questions? Okay. Well, hey, thank you so much. It was a pleasure participating in this webinar. I believe we have, I think it's 4 more of these scheduled, and different topics that we're going to be talking about, or 3 more scheduled maybe, and look forward to, I believe the next one we're going to cover the virtual desktop. So look forward to seeing you there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joseph, and thank you all for participating. We will be adding the recording of this call on the Microsoft Partner Community on the event post. As Joseph said, there are 3 more episodes scheduled for the following weeks, same day, same time. So looking forward to seeing you there. Have a great one, everyone.